We're good to go? Okay. Hello and welcome. And hello and welcome to anyone joining us online. My name is Rasmus Ölme and I'm the head of the MFA in Choreography here at the Danish National School of Performing Arts. And we host this info evening here as we are open for applications for our two MA programs. So next to the one just mentioned, there is also the dance and participation. And Laura Naundrup Black is here with me and she will be presenting as well about dance and participation. So the setup is like this. I will do a brief introduction like I'm doing now and say something about the program. And then Laura will come and present dance and participation. So for those of you who are online, there is a chat. And if you have any questions and you're worried about not remembering them until after, you can write them in the chat already. And afterwards we'll go through. But it means that we will do the two presentations in one go. And then we do questions and so after. Okay? And for those of you here, you'll just have to try to remember your questions until afterwards. Okay? All right, I can say before I go into the specificity about this program, I can say that we're very happy that we're opening for applications again for at least another round of these two MA programs here in Copenhagen. There has been, question marks around what will stay in Copenhagen and so after this relocation of dance educations. And there are still question marks, but at least we know this, that there will be another generation of MFA students in choreography in these two programs. And we're very happy about that. And we're sitting here in the new address, so over at Per Knudsens Vej instead of at the Philip de Langes Allé where we used to be. And we're excited about being here and having this possibility. So the two MFA programs, we are now the applications for the one in choreography. This will be the third generation. So we've only had two generations so far. As for the dance and participation, it was an existing program previously that then got reaccredited as an MFA, and it is now on also third application of MFA. Am I right? Yeah, it's true. It's the third application, but some of them, yeah. Okay, so I'll be telling you a little bit about this one, the MFA in choreography, and you have a picture here up from a performance from one of our previous students, and Snorra, as a kind of introduction. But I'll skip to the next one. And I'm going to say something about this because thinking about what an MA program could be, there are some different models, and I've used this model a couple of times to try to explain how we think about it. So the different, if you think the first one where it says specializing, if we think about the BA level as the sort of lower part of this, and then the MA level, it's like the one where you sort of specialize into a point, where the BA is a little bit more broad. So we have BA called dance and choreography. And then there's this MA program where sort of could be thought of like, okay, now we're specializing towards choreography. This is not quite what it is. And then there's this broadening, which I think some MFA programs have as well, where maybe your BA, you sort of finished your BA and you're done, but then you're interested in expanding a little bit what you're doing into other domains. And the MFA is a way to sort of open up to other directions. And of these models, the one that I think describes this one best, the MFA in choreography, is this what I call then expanding from within. So I'm thinking about that whoever came in is up there in this top part of the triangle, and they have something that they want to look closer at, but that they also, so the specialization is there in a way. They've already sort of narrowed in on something, but they also want to be able to open that up and see what that can be. So in that sense, it's not like a further education towards a specialization, but it's something that the student comes in with, like a series of questions or what we usually call choreographic interests that they want to explore. So, and it's not an exploration towards like I said, a specialization or necessarily narrowing in on something, but it's just as much about like opening something up. So this is a little bit how I imagine the program. You're coming in, you already have some interest, it's already pointing to something, let's say, you know, it's not just open to see like where am I going to point, but in this sort of defining, there is also some space for explorations and redefining, let's say. And so this is another little graph here, and it's because there's something that is that I think is significant for this MFA program. Although it's only called MFA in Choreography, when you look at the study plan, there are these two categories. So one called physical practice, and one called choreographic production. And we will have a look briefly later also on the actual study plan, and you can see what that fills in the study plan. But it's just without thinking about like the size of a course or anything, but more on a sort of conceptual level, these are two things that we want to have continuously with us throughout the education. And the reason is because physical practice can, you know, it's that we see in this Venn diagram here, you know, we have the overlapping part where it says and then the arrow down saying their mutual relationship. So there is an area where these two domains overlap, and that's sort of the area that we want to be exploring. It's not because they are the same all the time, but we want to explore how they overlap and relate to each other. So for example, it also means that they can be separate at times. You know, what kind of relationship they have doesn't mean that they have to be, you know, fused with each other. So you can have a physical practice next to a choreographic production. So maybe you're working on something choreographically, but you're also keeping a certain physical practice alive on the side, which is maybe not super related at that moment to what you're doing in the choreographic work. But we still would like you to think about the choreographic work in relation to your physical practice. So that's why to say, okay, the physical work you're doing is not necessarily exactly in line with what you're making choreographically, but you're relating the two together. So there's both a kind of insistence on the physical practice, but at the same time saying it doesn't have to be the choreographic work. But we are sort of encouraging a way of thinking, continuously thinking choreography through physical practice. And the reason I'm saying that, and there is maybe if I just jump briefly back to this expanding from within, and there has been, let's say, you know, there's this what you sometimes refer to as the expanded field of choreography. So if we go back maybe the latest sort of 20 years in choreographic development in this, let's say, Western stage setting that we're working in, there has been some really important attempts in trying to get, like, expand choreography outside the scope of dance. And here, emphasizing on the physical practice, and it says physical practice, it doesn't say dance, it's a way to sort of, let's say, make sure that the physicality of the choreographic thinking is still present. So that's why there is this emphasis. So that's why also where it's an expansion from within, rather than thinking that I'm expanding to see what else it could be, I'm also expanding inside my own understanding of what it is. All right. So here's a program structure or a study plan, and I'll just talk through it. So as you see, if you look at the left column there where it says module, they're very similar each semester. So first semester it just says subject module, and then it says Nordic Choreographic Platform, and I will get back to what that is. If you skip to the next column, you see there it says physical practice, choreographic production, and then documentation and publication. And then if you go down to the next, you see that it's exactly the same in the second semester. Also to the size of the courses there. So there's the last column there, you see the ECTS points. You know. So there's like an equal weight between physical practice and choreographic production. And then there's a 5, so a little bit smaller course on what we then call documentation and publication. So I talked already about the physical practice and the choreographic production, what that means, so I think that's clear. About the documentation and publication, we're seeing it as, because of course, like you see the last project module, the semester 4, it's just the master's project, the MA project, and then the student is working on their own for the full semester. Of course, with mentoring and so, but there's no teaching happening there. And the documentation and publication is to ensure that there is reflection and production of documents throughout the whole course, so that there is also something that you can return to and reflect on for the 4th semester when you're coming into the final project. But it's also a way to train and find formats of documenting and reflecting on one's own work. So the documentation and publication is very much thought as a tool for reflection and also a tool to practice for the MA project, because the MA project has 3 different sort of legs. So there's a performance part, like showing a work. Then there's a written part or a portfolio. So it doesn't only have to be written, we call it portfolio. And then there's a verbal presentation. And it's these 3 steps or 3 legs that are included. So the documentation and publication is also to ensure the sort of and prepare for the portfolio work and also the verbal presentations and so on. So that's why there's this quite simple setup for each semester that comes back each and every, the first 3 semesters until the last one when it's the MA project. And then there is this Nordic Choreographic Platform, or NCP, as it's also called. And it's a collaboration between the MFA programs in choreography in Oslo, Helsinki, Stockholm, and Copenhagen. So there are these 4 schools that have MFA programs in choreography, and we started up this collaboration when we started this MFA program in choreography, actually. So when we were about to start up this MFA, we got in contact with the other schools and asked if they were interested in having this collaboration, which they were. And now we have, since we started, had this gatherings. So the Nordic Choreographic Platform in each semester, it means that every semester there's a gathering between the 4 schools, and we have a rotating schedule. So we're going to the different places. So if it all works out within the 2 years, you will have been to, I mean, we will have hosted one, and you will have been to the 3 other schools. Or actually not necessarily the schools, because it's not always that we visit the schools, but we visit the country. So we've been in different places. Sometimes the gatherings have taken place at the school, but sometimes they've also been in other places. And we usually try to piggyback, like catch a ride on some other event. So, for example, we've been visiting Bergen in their dance festival. We've been also visiting Helsinki and Dance Moving in November, this festival. We've visited Stockholm when there was a symposium called Within Practice. So we try to time with these festivals or symposiums or something happening in that city that we create sort of a parallel program. So there is some kind of studies that the students do together, but then they also go watch performances or take part of workshops that are happening together with other people. And here in Copenhagen was the last time we had one. It was in May. And then we had more sort of presentations between the peers, all of them getting to present their work to each other in different formats. So we've been very happy about this NCP platform and the exchange that it creates, and also the possibility to, I mean, both it creates, it gives the student an idea about, you know, what's happening in some other places, and also just to create a bit of a bigger peer group, because of course we're not, you know, like small programs, so it's nice sometimes to meet up with some other people, and of course also a chance to visit these different events. Hopefully this is ongoing. It's you know, we're receiving funding, Nordic funding for this that we keep applying for. So, but all the partners are very invested in it. So we're hoping that it can continue like this. Okay, I think I've done the round of what I wanted to say. So if you have any questions, you need to remember them for a moment. And if you're watching it online, you can already write it in the chat, and we will bring them up later on. All right, Laura, I hand it over to you. I'll just disconnect here.
So I'm Laura Black, as Holger said, and I'm head of the MFA Dance and Participation. I want to say to both you who are here and those who are watching the live stream and posting questions in the chat, there was 2 students present to get to meet later, Maxime and Mark. So if you have questions about what it's like to be a student here, you can also post them and get some answers. I thought to begin with, I just want to say a little bit about this institution as a whole. Rasmus told you a little bit about the dance. I'm giving you a microphone. Okay. Let's try. Is this better?
Yes, great. Well, hello again then to those who are online. Now you can hear me. All I said so far is that there are 2 students present also that you can ask questions to later. So I just want to briefly situate the dance education within the wider context of the school. So the Danish National School of Performing Arts has dance and choreography, but we also have other things. We have departments here in Copenhagen, in Fredericia, in Aarhus, in Odense, and Holstebro, and we have dance in 2 locations, Holstebro and here. So that means that the students who study here, and they'll be the MFA students, will also be in the company of a lot of other students. So we have students that study lighting, scenography, sound, stage directing, management, stagecraft, and acting too. So it's quite a vibrant environment. Now about the MFA in Dance and Participation, I'm going to talk briefly about the structure and context of the education, talk a little bit about networks and exchange, and a little bit about the application process. So this is part of what we promise in the curriculum. It says the Master of Fine Arts program in Dance and Participation educates professionally practicing dancers and choreographers who wish to combine artistic and pedagogic practice with a view to develop and carry out artistic projects in which the participants' physical, social, and creative experiences are central. That's a very long sentence. But the point here is that there is this pedagogic practice and there is this artistic practice, and they are going to meet. this last sentence, it says something about the participant's experience, and that's important because participation can be a lot of different things. It can be pleasant things, unpleasant things, it can be explorative things, it can be exploiting things, it can be many, many different things. So, but just to say that in this education, it is handled in a way where there is respect for the participant. So that's a narrowing in of that field. Mm-hmm. So the aim of the education is an expansion. Now Rasmus had these tops before. Now here what we have is something else coming in from the side. So typically people who begin have a practice already, or they do have a practice already. So the artistic practice will progress, and then this pedagogic facilitative participatory field will sort of slam into that and something will happen. A typical student here, and this is not to say that this is something that you have to be at all, but just to say who are usually here, is a student or an artist who has a busy career and who wants to take a little bit of time to pull out from that to maybe reconfigure where they're going. It's typically people who want their practice to have a very direct impact on people, but also on the world. They are interested in how they can contribute, both to and they're interested in how other people can contribute to their practice and their artistic process. Now, this doesn't always mean that the practices that people have or need to have when they apply is, let's say, human-centric. It can totally be that the object or subject that's being worked on is something else. Maybe the artistic interest lies somewhere else, but somehow the social is a way into it. So to say the social is not necessarily the material itself, but it is a way of approaching things. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. Most of all, I think people who apply are people who want to take a critical look at their own practice, and this is something one has to be open to do, I think, probably in any MFA. And that does not mean that everything has to shift and change and be overruled, but I think if you go through an education like this and you don't feel challenged in your work and your practice, then it's not great. Then we haven't done our job. Mm-hmm. You do not, when you enter, have to have any kind of predefined project that you know you want to work on. It's not a requirement to know where you want this to take you, but you need to have an idea of what your hopes are for the future. That something must shift, but you don't need to necessarily know what it should shift towards. Mm-hmm. Last thing I want to say about the people who usually are students here is that it's often an international group, and that the teaching language, this is probably clear also from Rasmus' presentation, that the teaching language is English. Mm-hmm. I like this quote from Claire Bishop. It comes from another context of participatory art. But I like it a lot. I'll read it to you. Like all long-term participatory projects, this art must tread the fine line of a dual horizon, faced towards the social field, but also toward art itself, addressing both its immediate participants and subsequent audiences. It needs to be successful within both art and the social field, but ideally also testing and revising the criteria we apply in both domains. So, this is Claire Bishop talking about art as pedagogy, and what I think is resounding in relation to this education is that there's this idea that when you work in this overlap of the social and the artistic, it's not enough that success is not only to make it work, but hopefully you should push not only the practice itself, but also each field a little bit. So the proposals that come when you mix the pedagogical and the artistic should also scratch a little bit at the sides of what the pedagogical could be or what the artistic could be. It's quite a high aim to set, but it's something that you can aim towards. And how you do that, how you get to that, there's no set answer to do that. So it's an education that doesn't dictate one particular method. It's an education that aims to support each individual artist in their journey towards their solutions to the problems that they pose themselves. So that means that there's a lot of teaching and guidance along the way, but you also get offered a lot of things that you have to pick and choose where your emphasis should be, what makes the most sense for you to implement, what you should reject for now, what you pick up later, etc. So you have to navigate quite a lot. It's not a one size fits all whatsoever. You have to pick your own desires and find your own way through, with guidance, of course. So the overall structure of the education, it's a 2-year education. It's full-time. I think the students, Maxime, who is here currently, will testament to that. It really is full-time. There is occasional work on weekends and evenings, and there's some travel involved. But a typical day sort of falls within the time of 9 to 5 in the afternoon. That's typical. And there can also be preparations that you have to do outside of this. I often get asked if it's possible to be a parent and be in this education, and the answer is yes. Many people have done it. That doesn't mean that it's easy, but it's possible. It's possible. We have had the year groups where there were so many parents that we had to finish the teaching in the afternoon so people could pick up their kids. So we can figure that out. But what is not advisable, I must say, and I think I can speak for the MFA in choreography also, is to have extensive professional work outside the education. And by that I mean like a lot of touring work or long projects somewhere else. There's some flexibility, but I think I can say most people don't thrive so well if they're away for too long. It's nice to have this opportunity to do an education and to actually be here and do it. So very briefly, the working methods in the education, classes, lectures, workshop placements, etc., etc. There's lots of different ways of working, and the point here is that a lot of these overlap. So a lot of teaching sessions will be a mixture of different things. So you might have a studio practice where there's also some discussions going on with the same teacher. We're lucky to have more and more practitioners who can do both and can take the students through a good learning experience like this. There are some independent projects, there are some placements in various institutions. So I want to just briefly talk about an example of a project that happens. You can see here, if we return to the structure of the course, you have contextualization, which is more of let's say external knowledge that you mirror yourself into and debate as you look at your own practice through various paradigms. Then you have pedagogic creative practice, which is a very big, it's a bulkiest in terms of ECTS points, indicates how much work is in each of these subjects, and you can see pedagogic and creative practice has the most. So pedagogic and creative practice will both involve some practical development of own practice. It will involve a lot of workshop with external artists. It will involve tools from facilitation, creative dance, etc., and some placements. Artistic inquiry is really about artistic research founded predominantly in what we call KUV in Denmark, and also practice-based research. Then there's a performance project here in the second semester, which I'll talk to you about in a second, and then the education finishes with the graduation project, which is a large, independent, self-defined project in the last semester. So the performance project is just an example of a project where there is both some teaching when you go into it, and then there's a lot of independent work for the student in the performance project. The student chooses who and what to work with, and are asked to produce a performance, participant involving performance, in a staged space. So this means that what they have to do is both formulate a project, they have to invite the individuals they want to work with. They need to find out, of course, what and how the work will function, work with the production department. This coming year group will be collaborating with students studying lights, organize the performance, and then there's some reflection submissions afterwards, some guidance along the way. So that's all to say that there's a lot of different learning methods in each part of the program. And the idea is really ideally that you find various ways of reflecting both in and through and on practice, and find a way to work and to explore things that function for you. And allows you the biggest insights, you could say. Yeah, so I did mention this thing that there are many guest teachers. Now there's a lot of students here. I should say we're taking 5 to 7 students. This is from a workshop organized with other people. That's why there's a lot of people there. But lots of different inputs, varying opinions, varying approaches, sometimes conflicting also, so navigate one's own way through. Now, as I mentioned, placements is part of teaching methods here, and they're not necessarily, but very typically local. Can be part of a subject. For instance, in the first semester, one has to undertake some very short placements in different cultural institutions to sort of actuate one's practice in a facilitative context. But international activity is also very important in this program. Now, it is, as a student, at this institution, it's possible to do exchange elsewhere. So it is possible to take up to 1 semester in another institution through the Erasmus scheme. Typically, people don't choose to do this. They choose to stay with this education, or they do a shorter trip elsewhere, but it is a possibility. And then the school is affiliated with several international networks, NSP being one of them, as Rasmus just talked about. And these offer different possibilities to partake in workshops and camps or conferences or whatever it could be. Now, NCP is specifically to the choreography project or education. But I want to mention one network that we're part of that's very pertinent for this particular education, and it is the Glomus network. And the Glomus network is an international network of music, dance, and theater institutions across the world. I believe we are on all continents now. So it's a real mix of knowledges and approaches to art. These pictures here are from some previous students who are in Natal in Brazil for a camp. So that's a 10-day camp where you work alongside other students to create work and learn from each other and from teachers from all these institutions. I love this network. I think it really gives quite, Maxime is smiling, hope means yes. It gives a real chance to just really recognize and reconsider your own assumptions about what art is, what it should do in the world, what it could be, because you're going to meet some very different approaches that can really provoke your own understanding and assumptions. Mm-hmm. The next camp will take place in Nepal, in Kathmandu, and the students from Dance and Participation will partake in that. very briefly about the application process. So in order to be qualified, and this goes for both MFAs, you have to have a Bachelor in the Arts that's equivalent to it says equivalent to educations at the Danish National School of Performing Arts. Or it can be other artistic educations that's in scope and levels considered equivalent. This you can read more about online. The application process for the MFA in Dance and Participation consists of 2 rounds. First, you send in an application. And there's various things that we need to see. Again, have a look online. The deadline for that is Friday, the 15th of March at noon, Danish time, very important. And you'll be asked to send in motivation and CV and portfolio, etc. Then there's a selection of those students, and some will be prospective students, and some will be invited to an audition here in Copenhagen, which takes place the 22nd to the 24th of April. And then, as I mentioned, we'll take somewhere between 5 and 7 students. I need to also mention that the educations are free if you are from the EU or EEA, but if you're not, then the current tuition fee is 10,300 euros per semester. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Yeah. So, shall we shake our legs, Rasmus? What do you think? Anyone needs a toilet break or shake?
You're fine.
Yeah, fine. Let's continue then, shall we? Yeah, good.
I'll just join you up here.
Yes, please do. Yeah. So
And we can talk into the same mic if needed.
oh yes, we can.
Okay.
put it here.
There's one question from the chat, and I can start with that one. And it's a question about paperwork needed regarding English language level or anything else from foreign students to apply for these programs. We usually don't ask to document the English level, but we can ask for it if we feel that it's needed. So if we're noticing in throughout the audition process or in the written documents, so that we would like to check to make sure, it's something we can ask for, but it's not mandatory to start from. And it's just because, like Laura described, all the teaching is in English, so of course the level needs to be good enough in understanding and expressing yourself in it, so that you can get the full experience of the education. So, yeah.
Maybe I want to add that although there is these portfolio submissions, maybe a little bit more writing in dance and participation than choreography, I would think, that shouldn't deter anyone from applying. If you don't have any experience or have very little experience with writing and academic work, that's not, you'll be fine, we'll figure it out. Portfolio submission can take many forms, so we aim to find forms that fit the kind of reflections that need to be undertaken and the individual students. So that also goes for people with dyslexia, for instance. Not a problem, we'll figure it out. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. So far, that's the only question in the from the online. So I don't know. Is there anything here in the room you've been thinking about?
I was wondering about the application process and selection process for the main choreography, because it was not mentioned during the presentation. Also, like maybe for the experience of the last 2 rounds, but also for dance and participation, like how much do you expect, how many applications do you expect, and how many people do you invite, and to have an idea a bit of possibilities.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking also when Laura went into that, I was like, oh, I should say something about that. So thanks for that question. So I'll just repeat it once for those watching online and maybe didn't hear through the mic. So question was to say something more about the application process for the MFA in choreography. So We ask for the application to include, like a motivational letter, a CV, and a written description of these choreographic interests that and the applicant is interested in working with throughout the education. And we ask for some documentation of work that you have done already. So some videos, video documentation of some work. So we want to have it in text, but we also want to see something. And based on that, and of course we've only done this twice, so it's hard to say exactly where we land. I think the previous 2 rounds we've been around 25 applicants, I think. It says now that we take in between 4 and 6 students. So far we haven't taken in more than 4, but yeah, we can take in between 4 and 6. And so based on the written application and the documented work, the last time I think we've invited 8, I have to think it to see if I remember right, somewhere between 8 and 10 I think, for interviews. And then what we do is that you have an individual interview with the panel for about an hour, and we do this with a number of applicants in one day, and then at the end of the day we gather those applicants of that day and we have a collective session which is in the studio, and we set up some kind of system for you to sort of try out and feedback on each other's interests. So these interests that are expressed in the application, there's a chance to sort of show something or, apply some kind of method in the space together with the others. But we try to do a kind of filtering system between each other. So it's not this like, now we're going to try your method and now we're going to try your method. But we have someone explaining something, and then like if you explain an idea that you're interested in now, someone else turns that idea into a score that someone else then gets to interpret or something like that, so it's not like it's not this kind of comparison of your method and my method or so, but it's just a way to create the kind of space where we're also approaching the work together and not just individually, and of course to get a little bit of a feeling of being in the studio together. So maybe in relation to what Laura was saying before as well, like the sort of the in terms of like how the group works. I mean, this is quite an individual education. The choreographic production that you saw takes up a lot of space is that individual students' production. It's not something, I mean, of course the students can choose to collaborate if they want to, but it's not something that we ask for, or it's not required in any way. So it's quite individually driven. And then of course in the physical practice and also some other parts, there is collective teaching. We also try to collaborate between the programs, since we are small cohorts, that when we invite guest teachers that we feel are relevant for both programs, we try to put them together. And we also sometimes invite people from the outside to join, so to create a little bit of a bigger group and also have some different dynamics, so that you're not always with the same 4 students in the studio space together. So that's what the application round looks like. So next to the written application you have that individual interview and then a collective session the same day, and that session is just for a couple of hours or so.
Take place physically, not online.
We have had to do it online before, like in the pandemic. We prefer to not, but of course, there is some flexibility as well, because, of course, someone living far away or having troubles with exactly those dates, or, we can do our best, but we do, we do prefer meeting up physically, because there's something in that way of working together in the studio that is important to get a feel for as well. But I mean, there is, of course, understanding for complexities in case it's impossible for someone. We can try to look for solutions, but this is what we aim for.
Then there's a question here from Lucia, who says, about the audition for dance and participation program, what will the audition be about? Teaching skills or dance techniques, etc. And the audition can change a little bit from year to year, but there's definitely, there'll be a creative task in there, some kind of artistic response that needs to happen in the moment. There'll be some collaborative tasks. Now Rasmus says that the MFA in choreography is quite individual. The opposite goes for the dance participation program. The group is extremely important for each other's learning. So the environment that's created there is important. So therefore there will be tasks where we see applicants collaborate. Applicants are typically also asked to prepare something to share, so to facilitate something of a current interest that they have, typically for a larger group of people. And then there are interviews with the panel.
Should I do another question?
Yeah.
So another one here, Charlotte is asking, is it recommended to apply for both programs? No, I mean you can definitely, but they are separate programs, and it has happened that we've had applicants that apply for both, but it's not a recommendation. It's really up to each applicant whether they can see themselves in both programs as well or not. So,
can I add to that if you do apply for both, we treat each application totally separate. So you can be offered a place in both, or in none, or in one of them. We don't coordinate between us. So if you're interested in both programs, I think you should apply for both programs.
Then I say, does the school have any kind of support for the people who are not living in Copenhagen, for example, travel or accommodation? No, unfortunately, we do not. We have quite a lot of international applicants, and we do not have the possibility to support that.
Maybe it's worth mentioning that it is possible to get some financial support from the Danish government when you are a foreign student in Denmark. It requires that you work a certain number of hours outside of your studies, but many of our students are able to do that.
Yes, there's a study grant that comes with some conditions for foreign students, but like you say, we have most of our students, both MA and BA level, have the possibility to get that. Another question here from T. Where will the education mainly take place? Like P rooms, or what kind of places and spaces we have? P rooms is it's lingo for this address here, and it means production rooms, and there are several of them here. Well, this is an interesting question because we're in a new situation. You know, before we had the facilities over at the previous address. We are figuring things out now as we're moving into this place, and there are a few different spaces. Like right now we're in the stage tower, and this is the place where together with right next to us there's a big room in the lingo called Salen. That are like the two places that most of the dance education takes place during this semester, and those spaces will at some moment be available for us also for the coming school years. But there will be a little bit of everything, and we're also looking into some possibilities of collaborating with external partners when there's a lot of like a pressure on studio spaces. But it's a new situation, and we're figuring it out on the go. So far it's going quite well, I have to say. We're happy about how we've been able to solve it, and we count on continuing doing that. So that's the best answer I could give for now.
Any questions here in the room?
No.
Yes.
So
Yeah, Rasmus.
Yeah, hopefully that's why. All right, that seems to be it also from the chat. If you're still holding...
I don't really remember you explaining the physical practice part of the modules, like what they consist of.
Yeah. So Mark, who's one of our students here at the MFA program, is asking to break down a little bit what this physical practice can be. So, as I said, both of the physical practice and the choreographic production, and the fact that we're looking for a place where they sort of overlap with each other, also means that although they have separate, they're separate modules in the study plan, they also overlap a lot. So sometimes we can have a guest teacher, that in a way is just as much about choreographic production as it is about physical practice. But there are some of them that are more, can be invited with more of an emphasis towards one and the other. And so some of the invited teachers could be a part of physical practice. It could also be about keeping up an individual physical practice. So just having studio time in order to do that, whether your physical practice is taking place in the studio, could also be somewhere else. So that means that the physical practice part is also partly individual work. It's not that all of the 10 ECTS points in that course needs to be sort of taking classes or doing physical workshops. We also try to collaborate with the professional training with the dansehallarna that they have. We've sometimes been also hosting the professional training. So there's also an overlap there in relation to physical practice. And this is something we'll be happy to continue to do, and that we are in collaboration with Dansehallarna, who also now will move into their new building just in the coming month. So that's also an exciting news for sort of dance in Copenhagen, and that I also think can be meaningful for our educations here. So there is some also possibility of joining classes, and of course the luxury that we've had so far is that there's been the BA program, and they have continuous dance classes, and our MFA students have had the possibility to also join those. That will be a different situation next year, because we will not have a BA, at least not the next school year, here in Copenhagen. So those classes will not be there to be joined, but as I said, maybe we instead can increase the collaboration with the professional training.
And this also neatly answers Amalia's question, does the DAP program contain dance classes? Yes, it does, to the extent that Rasmus was just explaining. But there is not, let's say, a daily morning class or something like that organized every week. But there will be chunks of work. And certainly a lot of the learning takes place through practice, and that also means dancing.
Yes?
I didn't come prepared, but maybe you can give more details about the final project of the dance and participation education. Is it in the form of a dance piece, or in the form of an action, or a form of educating other people? I don't know. Like, what is the form of the final project?
I'll just repeat the question so that it comes in. So there's a question here in the room about the nature of the final project, the degree project for dance and participation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for your question. So the format as it is now is, it's a self-defined project. It has to involve participant in some form or another, but how you do it is really up to the individual student. So the hand-ins for it is, there is a practice sharing, then there is a portfolio hand-in, and then there is a verbal presentation. So, and the practice presentation could be, it really depends on the nature of the project. So it could be a performance. It could be witnessing a workshop that the student is teaching with a particular group of people. It could be inviting into a workshop. It could be so many different things. It really depends on the individual student. Yeah. So the graduation project, of course, is sort of like the culmination of the education, you could say. So it really should allow the students to dig a little bit deeper in that thing that they found along the way. Yeah. So we try as much as possible to be flexible in terms of formats, while also just not leaving everything open so that it's just totally confusing for everyone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the portfolio handling is partially written, but not fully. There's some leeway in how you do it. And then, the verbal presentation is a little bit more low-key for peers, meaning it's a little bit nerdier.
For example, the final project will be an action with non-dancers participants in a certain community somewhere. I don't know. Like I'm really going wild here, but.
So the question is if the graduation project could be a teaching project with a particular group of people in a particular community setting. Yes, it could totally be that. Yeah. And there's another question.
Maybe it's a question for you guys, if it's okay. But if you could tell a little bit more detailed about a day here at the school, in your everyday.
So that's a question for the students. Do you want to come up here?
So they can see you at home, please come up here. Yes.
Do we want to
Yes.
come on?
Yes. Please do. So that's a question about the everyday life at the school. What is it like? And what happens? Shall I hold it? Yes.
It's a bit of a hard question because we do a lot of different things. So maybe I can tell it better about the dance and participation, that I would see it more as weeks. That 1 week we are having a teacher who is in the studio with us, and we are moving a lot, and we're going more into moving with material or moving with improvisation from input from this teacher. And then we are a lot just in the studio with us as a group. And then another week we go somewhere else, and then we work with students from a school, for example. So then we prepare some workshops and we go teach over there. So I would say like it's more that every week has something different in my idea. And then we have the parts where we do our own projects, and then it really depends on what I want to do in that project. To go in the studio or visit places or read more. Yeah.
For the MFA in choreography, I would say similar in that it's like weeks. It's some sort of organising like this week working with this artist or something like that. But I would say there is a bit more of a rhythm for the first 3 semesters of like maybe like 3 weeks or a couple weeks where you're working with a guest teacher, and it's I feel like it's in some sense like preparation for then a period of production. So then you have a period of choreographic production, so roughly 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, depends on which semester, where you're making, and that is definitely a lot more independent, and that is you planning and like organising studio time on your own. Throughout that whole time, what we understand is that we are able to take part in the bachelor's morning classes. So there's a ability to do a daily practice if you need a daily practice. Then you have production time, and then we kind of have this like kind of cool down period, I feel like, in where we do deal with documentation. So that comes in at like 3 weeks each time. And they've been really, for me, they've been really interesting because I think it's quite a rigorous like challenge of like what is documentation, and like how does it relate to your practice? It's like really like, is a video the right medium for what work you make? I feel like That's kind of gives an overview of something.
Okay, I can, thanks. I take a couple of questions here. Chersa is asking, is it possible to bring collaborators in from outside of school for choreography? Yes, that's possible. Most of the students do that, either if it's like someone that they're performing with, or someone who's performing their work, or if it's someone making music, or so. There's quite a lot of that going on. Then we have a question from my dear colleague Kim. So he's part of the faculty here, and he's proposing that I say something about how often there are guest teachers, and more or less what are the profiles for each program. Maybe you need to say something more about the profile for each program, Kim. I was hoping we said something about that. But so guest teachers. So for the MFA in choreography, there are a couple of us here that are part of the faculty that sort of follow the students throughout the whole educations. So it is Kim Bigas, who was the person asking this question, and Malin Astner. So together with me, the three of us, we're the ones who sort of continuously follow the students throughout the program. Then there are some externals coming in, and that can be both mentors, and sometimes it's also mentors that the students choose themselves, that we let's say encourage them to find a mentor in relation to something specific that they are interested in, so that there's a mentor that comes in for a specific production, maybe for 3-4 times or whatever, to follow up on a specific theme. So that it could be because it's something that we cannot really provide within the faculty, but it's also just to have some connections out there, and so to not only be evolving around the school structure. Then we have invited guests, and this can be in quite a different format. I already mentioned sometimes we collaborate when there's someone there, or we've been collaborating with Dansahallarna when they are inviting some artists that we also feel relevant for our students. And then also we've been, like, for example, this past semester we did the choreographic production was in form of a performance lecture. So then we invited some artists to do online lectures about performance lectures that they have done. So then it was more lectures rather than coming to teach for a full week or so. So I would say that for in the MFA in choreography, there's this sort of different rings of concentration or focus. So where the three of us in the faculty are the ones that are the closest by there. And then there can be someone, a collaborator to each student, or a mentor that they choose, and maybe also some teachers that come back, that they might meet again. And then there's sort of these like one-off, who's just someone who comes in to teach for a week, and like I said, not necessarily specifically only to this program, but more generally. And so there's quite a lot of guests coming in, but at the same time, like I said, the sort of continuous mentoring happens between us and the faculty. So another one, let's see. I was asked to explain about the final project for choreography. So I'll say something about, I mentioned in a little bit earlier there that it has these three different legs, that it's both a performance work, a portfolio, and verbal presentation. So that's it, and that's sort of the only description available. And these different works should somehow, let's say, complement each other, so that it's not like the verbal presentation is not just a verbal account of what the performance work was, but to think about them more as like sort of that they together create the whole MA project. So the portfolio is a chance to sort of expand on some things that you might not be able to expand in the performance format. And the verbal presentation can be a moment to explain in detail more things than maybe what the performance format allows for, or that you prefer doing verbally instead of writing it in text. So it's about like how these three things are not just like three perspectives on one same thing, but maybe more how they together create a whole. And that can take different shapes depending on the project. So each project will sort of need to find a way to make itself available for evaluation through these three formats. We've had the portfolios. People have some have preferred to really only have text. Some have proposed more of a sort of web page media that can include a lot more. So, and just like you said about the portfolio, it's thought in a broad perspective, that it can look differently depending on the interest of the person, what kind of format they prefer to express themselves, but also the nature of the project that they're doing. Okay.
Can I just add also, in relation to Kim's question about the teacher profiles, that for the MFA in dance participation, that there is me who is set with it, and then sometimes other faculty members will be part of it, but it is really predominantly guest teachers. And what I wanted to add to what Rasmus said is that this is actually a real luxury of having such small educations, is that you can really have a look at what are the interests of these people, where should this go. So of course you have to plan ahead for some of the time, but we can really try and nurture the individual interests of each student. So it's not set in stone who comes. For dance and participation, we try to also invite the same guest teachers back several times, so there is a little bit of sense of continuity with some guest teachers, but otherwise it's new input. Both within the field of dance and participation and things that can kind of provoke it, sit right on the edge in different places.
Thank you. I go to next question here. There's a question about if the students of the MFA in choreography engage with the BA students in Holstebro. And we are planning to do so, because so far in our first semester of the MA in choreography, they've been working together with the BA students here in Copenhagen. And now that we don't have BA students here next school year, it is our plan to organize that. So we're hoping that it can fall into place. And then there was another question about the NCP, whether that concerns only the master in choreography or also dance and participation. It is a collaboration between the choreography MAs, but with that said, it has also happened that some of the students from dance and participation had joined. It depends a little bit on the amount of funding we have and whether there is a spot left. But the collaboration is primarily between the MFA and choreography. Okay, we're at the end of the chat questions. I don't know, is there any other pressing issue? No? You have something to add?
No, I would just say to those who are watching this online, maybe today, maybe another day, if you have questions, you're of course welcome to contact us to get some answers. And to those who are here, I thought it would be nice to give you a chance to just have a little chat with the current students, because they of course are the ones who know what it's like to be a student here.
Okay, and so I can also say this, if someone is watching this afterwards, not through the live stream, because this video will be available later as well. So that also means for those of you here, feel free to share it with others that you think might be interested. So thanks for attending here, and thanks for attending there. And we're looking forward to receiving your applications. Yeah. All right. Thanks.